What's something you wish you never saw? My daughter on life support. Brain dead after a car accident before she was wheeled away to be an organ donor. Oh dear, guys. This one's going to be horrible, isn't it? I really don't think you're going to be hearing much from me. I can't cope with this. My 10-year-old nephew in his little coffin, without any hair, ripped me to shreds. I'm fortunate from what I've seen is just stuff on the internet. I worked security in an emergency ward, but I didn't actually see much of anything in the way of gore. I just see the gurney on the way in. The worst experience I had there was what I smelled. I was coming back from the cafeteria, and on my way to emergency, there was a very strong smell of pork barbecue. My first thought was some ass brought his hibachi into the waiting room and is cooking their dinner, which, in my defence, would not be much of a stretch with all the other strange poop that happened there all the time. Turns out, there was an apartment fire and we had half a dozen serious burn victims come in. That's when I found out burned human flesh smells like pork barbecue. I served on a federal jury for a child pornography case. We had to watch 3 10-second clips of what the guy downloaded as part of the prosecution's case. 2 of the clips I was able to view and forget pretty much immediately. The third is permanently engraved in my brain, unfortunately. My wife's beloved dog was torn in 4 pieces after he ran out under a truck when my niece took him for a walk. My wife, extremely upset that her dog of 16 years was dead, insisted and kept going on and on to see the dog. I had to put him back together again and spent most of the time washing one side of his body so it wasn't covered in blood. In the end, I felt I did a good enough job so that she could view him one last time. My wife made her peace. Oh, gosh. I don't know how long I can do this. I'm really struggling to read these. But at least your wife made her peace. At least she made her peace. When I was 9, I stayed with my grandparents in a different country for a school term, about 2 months. The house had a cellar that housed my grandfather's work tools and benches as well as a fridge. I went into the cellar to get a drink and saw my grandfather on a chair with his head thrown back and eyes closed. He was getting sucked off by the suction tube that cleans up sawdust. I didn't know what he was doing at the time and kind of stared trying to figure it out. He saw me and instantly stopped, and I ran away and remember telling my grandmother about it in a jokey way because I thought it was funny. I think back to that and cringe. A young boy was hit by a car in my cul-de-sac a few years ago. I didn't see it, but ran to help when I heard his mother screaming. I had first aid, but it was clear I couldn't do anything. He died at the hospital later. Wish I never saw it because the memories of the sights and sounds are ridiculously clear still. Makes me really appreciate EMTs and emergency room nurses, and doctors who have to deal with tragedy on a daily basis. Yep, agreed. I think that's something we can all agree on here, guys. Round of applause for all of you breaking your back for us. The emergency room nurses, the EMTs, the doctors, we love you. For me, it was the video of the guy who killed himself and live streamed it. The gore wasn't so much of an issue, as he was on the phone with his girlfriend at the time who was pleading with him, and his mum was the first one to see him dead after hearing the shot. The neighbour's dog dead in the middle of the road. She was a little rat terrier named Penny, and every day after work I would come home and she would wait for me by my driveway. She always waited so she could play with my dog. I would let him out and they would play so well together. She had free rein at my house, could come in and would hang out watching TV with me a lot. We were moving and it was the last load, last time I would see her. As I went up to call her to say goodbye, I looked down the street and I saw her laying in the road. The garbage truck had hit her and it was such a bad scene. I still think about her often. That's been 11 years ago. My dad naked, but I'll keep doing it to care for him while he recovers from his heart surgery. Really weird to try and clean someone in one of those shower chairs, by the way. Honestly, maggots crawling out of a man's trach tube. Most horrendous smell ever. Maggots make me uncomfortable. And to see them coming out of a living man's throat and seeing them and black sludge go flying across the room when he coughed was just... Needless to say, I noped out of there hella fast. My dad fallen on the floor, half paralysed, barely able to talk, calling me. He was drowning in his own vomit. He died a few hours later. It hasn't even been a month since he died, but this picture of him collapsed on the floor calling me for help while barely being able to speak will haunt me for the rest of my life. Guys, I'm out. That's done me. Gone. Out of here. A shoebox of Polaroids of my dad sharing my mother's dead body. When I got the call late at night and drove to the retirement home, the employees there acted like it was expected of me. Like, of course I got to go down in the basement and look at her one last time. So I went along with it. My dad later asked me what in the world I was thinking, and I don't know. I'd much rather have remembered her the way she was when she was alive. But now all I see is a dead grimace full of agony. Oh, I really, really feel for you because I can relate to this one. It happened with a family member of mine, and in a way, I'm grateful because it felt like closure, but also I was definitely seeing the image of his face in my mind for months, even years, and it wasn't a nice image. It wasn't how I wanted him to be in my brain. So I can completely agree with this one. Remains of a person who was burnt alive. A few years back, I saw a video of a young woman ascending an escalator with a toddler. At the top, the floor breaks beneath her and she falls in, has just enough time to hurl the kid out of harm's way and then gets chewed up into the machinery. You can hear the bones of her legs breaking. I was fricked up by that for ages. Still can't bring myself to get onto an escalator. I hope her kid is doing okay. Hopefully too young to remember. I'm not going to go find that video to link it, and I strongly advise you to not go looking for it. Encyclopedia Dramatica. Back in the 2000s, there was a website that started with the warning that only true heroes could get to the end of the page. The next image was a baby deer licking a baby bunny on a lush green field. Then another one of the deer and bunny. Then the page loaded all the way, and the scroll bar got longer and longer. A gif of a woman in high heels crushing a live kitten till its brain squirted out. Burned bodies. A GIF slaughterhouse security camera showing a hog having its head cut off with a chainsaw and the headless body running around. Mutilation, gore, animal torture, dead children, scat play. Hundreds of ever-worsening images. I'd have made it to the bottom, but I had nightmares afterwards and was generally uneasy around strangers for a while. I spent a few months in prison a few years back, and in the gym, I befriended a guy from the same corridor as me. Eventually, we were smoking cigs, drinking coffee in his cell, when I asked, "What put you here?" Which is something you should generally never ask anybody inside the rock, because the joke is that everybody's innocent. But by that time, we were already pretty good buddies, so he didn't mind. So he says, "There's my folder behind you in the shelf. Take a look." I wish I did not. In these police files / evidence files that were in the folder, there were very, very graphic pictures. Worse than you can ever see in a horror film. Some guy had owed him some money for some meth. He'd gone to his house, tied him up onto a chair with duct tape in the middle of the kitchen floor, then carved his head open from ear to ear, take the top of the skull off, and spooned out the brains. Some questions are better left unasked. Can someone please come and pick my jaw up from the floor? An Afghan soldier step on an improvised explosive device. Also, the body of a close friend after an accidental overdose. And the list goes on. The final snapshots in There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane. I'm a midwife. We don't always look after mums with happy endings. I do a lot of bereavement work. We don't get support for this. Even with the really tough cases, it's just part of the job as far as management are concerned. I often go to the store cupboard and have a little cry by myself. I talk to the babies. I use their names. They deserve to have them spoken. 2 little girls getting run over by an 18-wheeler right in front of me when I was 16. The girls were playing on a bicycle in a park near the street. They were trying to go around the park riding the same bike, one of them pedaling and the other one moving the handlebars. I was walking on the sidewalk towards the park. When I was about 10 meters away from the girls, they lost control of the bike, went towards the street, tripped and fell under the trailer right in front of the last set of wheels. They were completely crushed by the truck. Blood and bits everywhere. The driver stopped and literally fell on his knees crying as soon as he saw what happened. The girl's mum lost it, crying uncontrollably, screaming and pulling her hair. An angry mob started to form and beat the driver. The guy was screaming, "Please kill me. I deserve to die." But a woman who was with the mother saved him from the mob and started to comfort him, telling him it wasn't his fault. I was shocked, frozen in place watching all of this happen around me until I snapped out of it and ran home. It was a horrifying accident. Gave me nightmares for weeks. Gosh, that is terrifying. I'm so sorry you had to witness that. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video and have a wonderful day. Getting hit by a car. You ever just feel like time stops and you say, yeah, this is the end? Well, lived a good life, I think. Scarier if the car is being professionally piloted by a drunk Karen telling me to watch the road while I was fricking dying. I thought that she would never call the ambulance and I would have died while she was yelling at me. The only reason I lived is because there was this one absolute saint walking on the other side of the road. If he wasn't there, pretty sure the woman would have never called the police and I would have died. She got sued, of course. I also somehow lived without major injuries, so good ending. Maybe 10 or 12 years ago, late night driving back home, I saw something weird spread on the right lane of the highway. It was like jam with chunks on it, but a lot. It was flesh. Someone had been run over and dragged by presumably a large truck. At the end of the spread, there was a body with only head, torso, one arm and like half a leg, or it looked like that. A few years ago, I saw a video where someone filmed themselves shooting a reporter/cameraman and posted it to LiveLeak or something. I still remember the woman's shirt flicking as it interacted with the bullets. Really scary stuff. Guys, I'm so glad I haven't seen anything remotely similar to any of these. Is there anyone else? Like, this stuff is genuinely so shocking. I can't even cope with it. My neighbour's beautiful collie got hit head on by a vehicle speeding through the neighbourhood. The guy just grinned and sped off, leaving her dead in the road. It broke my heart to pull her off to the side. The worst, since I was only a kid at the time, was having to tell our neighbour what had happened, as we both loved that sweet dog. My dad's Skype messages with another guy when I was 12. He's still married to my mum, and I'm not sure why, or if he really wants to be with her. They weren't okay. I have zero problems with my dad being gay if he is, but I've always wondered if he actually loves my mum. Guys, I know bisexuality exists and is a possibility. What I meant was, I don't have any issues with him liking men in general, bi or gay. That's mad that you saw that so many years ago and your parents are still together and you're keeping that secret. That is literally crazy. If you're listening to this, please can you update us? Like, how is the situation now? Are your parents still together? How's it going? I was at the library. We heard the fire engine noise outside. Naturally, the other kids and I go outside and look. There's blood everywhere on the ground and a guy's head is hanging off his neck. It's not completely detached from the body, but the neck and spine are broken, so it's hanging lifelessly. I was on a family member's boat when I saw a kid tubing from his family's boat get hit and killed by another boat. The dad was tearing his hair out and the whole family was screaming. My uncle told us to look away, but I'll never forget how horrible it was. Something I'm glad I deliberately avoided seeing. The jumpers at WTC on 9/11. While evacuating the area, I passed within a couple of blocks and people were on the corners, where there was a view of the burning towers, and screaming as people jumped. I realised what was happening and kept my eyes ahead and down. Had seen the second plane hit. That was more than enough. Saw my grandpa's balls. After my grandma died, I spent a week over there to keep him company. He was napping and I went in to see if he wanted to go get dinner. He was lying on his side wearing just a t-shirt. It was a long t-shirt, but his balls were longer. I was 15. I'm 38 and can still see them perfectly in my mind. There's a mountain man who lives near my family cabin. He's an interesting man. Full tin hat kind of dude. Also, not fond of clothes. One time he came into our yard to offer us some cabbage he'd grown and did not bother to put on a scrap of clothing beforehand. Seared into my retinas forever. A video I came across of a man being decapitated, and naked photos of my dad. Equally bad for me. Okay, let me just say, those photos of your dad must have been terrible to even equate to seeing someone being decapitated. Honestly, my dad crying. Not because men shouldn't cry or some bull poop. Just seeing him cry. Yes, I completely agree with this one. I think I've seen my dad cry twice at most, and it was so heartbreaking. I literally couldn't cope with it at all. While looking behind me while running up the basement stairs at night, an inconveniently placed straw man decoration was right there. When I was in high school, we had an assembly to discourage drinking and driving. They used photos of crash scenes, people decapitated, ran through by branches, crushed by trees, while playing the song Let the Bodies Hit the Floor by Drowning Pool. Really distasteful stuff. Come to find out, the people in these photos didn't necessarily die from drinking and driving. They were all taken from our county sheriff. The photo included the dead body of a classmate's family member. His accident had been caused by slipping on the ice. I was pretty distraught and told my parents about it. They didn't take it seriously or else didn't believe me. Not sure if there was ever any fallout from that assembly, but the older I get, the more angry it makes me. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos coming daily.